When you're asking for a raise, you want to make it as easy as possible to work with you, as easy as possible to give you what you're asking for, but you have to phrase it in a way where it's impossible to say no from the business's perspective or from the hiring manager's perspective. Rephrase all of your accomplishments, not I have accomplished and exceeded my KPIs, but I have done all of these things which have had this positive impact on the business.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley, and welcome back to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today, we've got a great Tactical Tuesday episode ahead of us, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we've got shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics. Stop by every Tuesday like today for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Some days we open it up for Q&A. Listeners can drop in questions, so send those to us at podcast@loxo.co. And occasionally, Matt stops by for a mic drop episode where he shares something he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. All right, today's Tactical Tuesday. When was the last time you asked for a raise? How'd that conversation go? Did you feel prepared for it? Anything come from it? Did you just kind of feel like you were dragged along for a while? So this is a conversation that many of us have had at some point and likely will again. So today, Vivien's joining us to go over everything that you should be thinking about and doing the next time that you really start to plan to have the talk with your manager. So grab pen and paper, and I'm looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be a fun one. So Vivien, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Oh yes. So the big talk, the raise, the annual review, the insert whatever you want to call it, but we've been hitting on some tough topics lately, like around tough conversations, ones that you might want to think about and get into. So this was naturally one that we started to gravitate towards, which, it's not explicitly just for candidates, it's for recruiters, it's just general career advice also. But what I really like is you have a framework for how you approach this, how you have worked with candidates, whether they were thinking about, taking that internal offer when they did get or the internal promotion, the internal pay bump when they did get that external offer. So let's talk a little bit about how you like to phrase this. You've got it from like a long-term view, a short-term view, and then almost like a day of meeting, so to speak. So I'll let you take it from wherever you want to get started with this conversation, but I think it's going to be fun.
Let's start with long-term.
All right.
So with the long-term, you want to start with the original job description. And by original job description, I mean last time that you got any kind of raise or new money, whether that is you just started and this is your first annual review and you would like to get a raise. That's the original job description. If you got promoted in the meantime and it didn't come with a raise and whatever may have happened, you want to go back to the original one because what you originally negotiated was for that set of responsibilities and KPIs and all that kind of stuff. So you want to start with that one. And throughout time on ideally a weekly basis, but obviously a monthly and quarterly basis is going to be super helpful as well. Keeping track of how you are meeting the expectations outlined in the job description, how you are actually going above and beyond in some ways, but within that responsibility. So for example, in my case, I am managing customers. If that is my responsibility, how am I going above and beyond? What are some of the KPIs that I am meeting versus how am I exceeding them? So this is still all within my scope, and you want to keep track of that so that you can then confidently go into that conversation and say, I have been doing my job. I've been doing it really well. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of that is as you are working, you're starting to see problems. You start to take on little things here and there, or kind of poking your nose into like little short-term projects or little process improvement type stuff. And you want to document anything that you have done that was outside of the scope, but still created huge value and benefit, any kind of contribution that you have made that made something better. You want to keep track of that. And this also goes for anytime you have gotten really good feedback. This also goes for any time that you have made any kind of positive contribution or anything of that sort. By that token, you also have to evaluate where have you fallen short? What are some of your areas of weaknesses because you have to think about it in terms of the manager's job. 9 times out of 10 is going to be, what is the smallest raise I can give here? And to justify being on the lower end, they're going to say, well, this is where you have fallen short. So if you are aware of these shortcomings and you have a good reason for why those have happened, sometimes it can be, I wasn't able to get to any of these because we got overwhelmed and we were asked to prioritize this. So naturally, I had to kind of push back on that one. But you have to document this. You have to have something where you can actually give an explanation as to, this is where I've fallen short, because you best believe when you're asking for a raise, they're going to ask about this. They're going to bring this up.
I love it. All right, I've already taken way too many notes on this type of thing. Yeah, this is a topic that's always so interesting, fascinating to me. The first thing that comes to mind on this is you're talking about the original job description. Dear recruiters, now you see why writing a good job description is so important, because you're going to use it for yourself. If it's unrealistic, I mean, this is exactly what you're going to be holding yourself to at the end of the day. So this is another thing to keep in mind as you're writing some of those job descriptions and what you pop into those. But the point you're getting into, it's like, so you want to highlight the good, you want to highlight the bad. On the good, I've taken an approach like this before, so I love that you're also talking about it, where it's, how do you list out what you've done on top of the job expectations, other responsibilities, other projects. And what I found when I had that conversation, we'll get into this in a little bit, but when you have that in the document yourself, put it in a different font color, not different font, a different color. So it's like you've got the original in, call it black, and then you've got the updated in blue, something so it stands out, because that's going to make it very visually obvious as well, all of the additional things that you're doing. It doesn't just like it's getting longer, but when they go take it to the HR team, to their manager, whoever, for approval, they can be like, oh wow, this person's doing a lot, and it's so obvious, it's cut and dry right in front of their face, that it's hard to ignore that. So that's an interesting one, but I also do like proactively getting ahead of the shortcomings, because again, one, don't hide from it. Two, this gives them less stuff to poke into, because you're kind of guiding that conversation where you want it to go, so to speak, with some of that, so you can get ahead of it. You can have the conversation, the talk track already prepared for what happened or anything else, like you said. So I really like how you said, it's like paint the rosy picture, but also, include some of the thorns that were included in that rose.
Yeah, because most people are not intentionally trying to fall short on something. It usually comes down to, I wasn't able to get to this because we needed to prioritize this. But
Hmm.
a lot of times, good managers are not going to be micromanaging you. So they really don't know what you are doing on a day-to-day, weekly, or even monthly, maybe even quarterly basis, depending on how often you meet with them. And even then, you're typically just asking for guidance or kind of doing project check ins. So it always varies, but the little wins that you're doing here and there, or the different challenges that you're encountering that are forcing you to reprioritize things that are not as important, but still are part of your job description, be open and honest about that, because you don't want this to be sprung upon you during the conversation. But if you say, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking in terms of a raise. This is why I think I should be getting there, but I also dialed it down a little bit because I do realize I have fallen short here and there. The reason why I fell short there is because I had to prioritize X, Y, and Z. And this is also really good for your own confidence and peace of mind, because that way you're not going to go in there anxiety ridden, like, oh my gosh, I know I fell short on this one. Are they going to bring it up? Are they not going to bring it up? At the very least, you're prepared and you know how to address it, so that alleviates that anxiety and you can really go in with full confidence.
Yeah, now everyone go back, rewind about 1.5 minutes, listen to that part again, take notes. Chef's kiss, perfection. All right, so that's we'll call it the long-term plan. Well, you're going to have that conversation someday, but it's not quite the time yet, or it's not on the radar. So let's move into your short-term side, when it sounds like, you've identified that the conversation needs to happen.
Yeah. So what I recommend is you start thinking, like, if you know that every year on your anniversary or something like that, there's an annual review coming up and you're going to have that conversation, the short-term prep starts about a month before, is what I would say. If it's not something that typically gets scheduled, I would recommend reaching out to the hiring manager and saying, hey, I would love to chat about a potential raise and things like that. Give the hiring manager at least a week time to kind of prep for it, because they also have to investigate, okay, what's in our budget? Like, how can we fit this in? What's going to happen here? So there's larger things that are happening. So that's number one. Number two, make sure that when you have approached your hiring manager or who you are reporting to, don't let it slide. Like, it has to happen within a month of you asking for it. So make sure that you're staying on top of it, because you also don't want to be pushed around where you have said, hey, I would like to discuss something about a raise. And if they're not prioritizing that to get that done within a month, which is fairly reasonable, I would say, then something else is going on. And this is something that you should consider as like a yellow flag. So, but that's a topic for another day. So make sure that you give them a week to prep for it, but also don't let it like drag on for more than a month, unless like stuff is genuinely happening and there's good reasons for postponing it further. But document that, so that it's not like, oh, you have sprung this conversation on us. No, 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 no. I reached out on this day. I suggested a week later. You pushed it back 2 months. Like, you've had more than enough time. So make sure that you document this. That's number one. Number two, obviously, research salary ranges. So what I love to do is consult ChatGPT. I essentially start by being like, this is my job description. This is where I started. Since then, I have accomplished this. I've done a really great job with this. I actually started like putting my fingers in my nose into these types of projects, and they had this kind of positive outcome and things like that. I would like to move into this kind of role. I think I have added this particular value to the company and to my projects and what I'm working on. And I would like to get a raise. What do you think is a reasonable raise? And ChatGPT will give you some feedback and will also tell you your job description kind of lines up with this particular title. And then you can take that job title and look on salary ranges on Glassdoor, on LinkedIn used to have it, but that doesn't. And like all of these different sites that give you salaries. And that way you have a solid base for, this is what my worth is. This is what I have contributed. This is the value that I have created. And I think this is what it's worth. And the market agrees with me. And so the big thing about these types of conversations is you have to feel confident to ask for what it is that you want. And you have to feel like, yes, I can do this. Like, I'm not like going out on a limb and like asking for something crazy, but you want to feel like you're asking for something reasonable, because the way that you're going to carry yourself in that conversation is going to be very different, which leads me to my next point. And it's work on your attitude and mindset for when you're going into that conversation. You want to go in with a genuinely humble attitude, always curious, always with a student mentality, and always with gratitude and appreciation. And the reason why is, the best analogy is when somebody's asking you for cupcakes, are you more likely to make cupcakes for someone who's demanding them, who's very unappreciative and difficult to work with, and it's basically like, I love these cupcakes, you never make these cupcakes for me? Or do you prefer to make cupcakes for someone who's like, oh my gosh, you make the best cupcakes ever. I absolutely love them. I miss them. I have been craving them. Any chance you could find some time to make these amazing cupcakes for me? I'm going to gravitate towards the one that is really excited about my cupcakes, not the one who's demanding to get my cupcakes, right? Same thing is when you're asking for a raise, you want to make it as easy as possible to work with you, as easy as possible to give you what you're asking for. But you have to phrase it in a way where it's impossible to say no from the business's perspective or from the hiring manager's perspective. And so part of the short-term plan is also rephrase all of your accomplishments, not I have accomplished and exceeded my KPIs, but I have done all of these things which have had this positive impact on the business. Like, it saved this much money, it actually increased revenue in this area, it did brand awareness, whatever it is, you want to phrase it like from their perspective, not from this is what I did and I'm amazing. Like, we already know that. You want to put it in their language, and that's your short term. And once you've done
Yeah.
that, you're good to go.
I mean, you're building a business case for yourself to why they should further invest in you. So when you think of it from
Yeah.
that lens, not to take out your individuality or anything, but that's kind of the most simplified version of this is: do we further invest in this individual because is there a an exceedingly higher output return if we do this with them. So yeah, I love this. I'm fully going to call this the cupcake conversation moving forward. Absolutely cracking up at that. So if anyone has cupcake conversation soon, let us know. Would love to hear how that goes. All right, so that's preparing for the cupcake conversation. Now let's talk about the day of cupcake conversation. You're going to ask for those.
Yeah. Bring your notes. Make sure that you have had a good night's sleep. You've eaten, like really cover the basics. You want to set yourself up for success because sometimes the hiring manager or whoever you're reporting to would love to give you a raise, but there's some other things that may be going on in the background and they may not even be able to share them with you and they will have to push back. And you have to be okay with them pushing back. But if you're not going to be okay with that, you have to start looking at potentially other avenues, right? So whatever the outcome may be from that conversation, you have to be okay and confident going in that and really standing up for your own worth, because you're having this conversation because you have demonstrated and you've made a really good business case showing this is what I have contributed. You have all of your notes, you are prepared, you know about your shortcomings, you know where you would like to go in the company and things like that. So you're bringing all of this to the table and you have to be okay with anything if it goes badly and it doesn't go how you expected or wanted to go, or if they kind of lowball you and things like that. But you don't know whether they're legitimately lowballing you unless you have done your research, unless you have written down what you have accomplished and what you haven't accomplished. And this will give you a really good sense for, am I really that amazing? Is my business case really that good where I can like ask for a really generous raise? Or have I kind of slacked off, which is totally fine. But then a big raise isn't all that justifiable, right? So you have to be realistic. And this is where the long-term kind of planning and documentation is going to be really helpful, because everybody understands when stuff comes up, you know, like there's family, everybody understands there's life. And if your performance suffers a little bit, but still is really good, that's great. But then realistically speaking, you really don't deserve the same raise as someone who has put everything into work and has been going above and beyond and has twice the result that you do, you know? And so you have to know your business case. You have to know how to get in there, and you have to know what are you worth? What is a low ball offer? And then also have a plan for, am I going to be okay with that low ball offer for a raise and then keep going? Or do I have to look for something else, you know? So go in with curiosity, but also be genuinely trying to like understand their side of things and know what you have contributed, and ask them, what do you think about my performance? Any kind of feedback, you know, because this is where they're going to start pulling in like the bad stuff to try to justify a lower raise, but you're prepared. You've done your homework. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be like, yes, you are right, but this was going on at the time. And hopefully that will make it a successful conversation about cupcakes.
Because what I'm about cupcakes, because what I'm really taking away from this too is like, how do you make it as easy as possible for them to have the conversation with whoever they have to ask? Because more often than not, they're not the one that's really making this decision. They're going to yes, no, and say like, Vivien does deserve this raise, Vivien doesn't deserve this raise. But they're usually not the one saying, okay, we can increase her salary by X%. She can have this up to Y more dollars per year. They usually have to go to HR. They have to go to the CFO. They have to go to someone. And that's the person that's usually holding it. They don't have the context of you. So when you can prepare that document, like you said, here's her job description. Here's all the other stuff that she's done. Here's the results that she's driven, the metrics that she's helped improve. And then here's the salary like comps for her role in this region. The more that you can give them, it makes it so much easier for that person, instead of just saying like no right off the bat. They've got all that for themselves right there, right in front of them. So it's much easier for them to look through and be like, well, one, holy cow, she's organized, prepared, she's ready to have this conversation. Like that says something about her in and of itself. But two, it gets rid of the work that they also subconsciously don't want to do. Like, oh, another employee, I have to go through and do all this research. Like you just did it all for them. You built the case for yourself. Now it's kind of pretty cut and dry, clear. Like, yeah, this person probably does deserve this raise that they're asking for.
That, and like you said, they're going to have to prepare all of that data. And when it's them preparing that data, they're going to look for data points to justify a lower raise, if any raise at all. Whereas you're going to be focusing on, how can I get the raise that I really want, that I really deserve, like to be a little bit more on the higher end at the very least. And so you want to make sure that you have all of the ammo, that you're coming in prepared, because a lot of times what ends up happening is somebody comes in and is like, I want a raise. And then the hiring manager says, well, that's not really in our budget, because you haven't given them a reason to why you should get that raise. And sometimes people have this idea that, well, they should know how much I'm worth. Like, this place would fall apart without me. And it's like, maybe that place would fall apart without you. But if you haven't communicated that to the manager has no idea. The manager cannot advocate on your behalf to get a better raise. They may enjoy working with you. They may see the benefits of it, but they are not aware of the day to day unless they're a micromanager, in which case most people don't want to work for a micromanager, but that's a story for another day. And so you want to make sure that you're coming in prepared to give whoever's advocating on your behalf, to give them the ammo to advocate on your behalf and take away and like help them prepare for that conversation. Because ultimately, the cupcakes conversation that you're about to have with your manager, that is just the first step in it. They already know kind of like a general range, but they ultimately have to go in and potentially ask for something a little bit more. And when they ask for more than what they were originally told, they have to justify that one way or another. And if you've already done your homework and you can give them the cliff notes, you can give them all the cheat codes to get there with you, then it makes it so much easier. And obviously they're going to want to work with you. And then it makes sense for you to get that raise. You want to make this as easy as possible for them. And that starts with long term. How are you working with them? Are you easy to work with? Do you get along with people? And it's little things that you can do here and there to kind of stack the odds in your favor. But obviously document what you're doing so that by the time that the conversation comes around, a lot can happen in a year. You can forget a lot of little things that have happened along the way. And then it's like, wait, I didn't really do a good job with that, but why didn't I? You know, like you want to make sure that you're keeping a pulse on things, on the good and the bad, and documenting everything so that if anything comes up, you have all the notes.
Love it. Well, this is helpful. This is really helpful. I know that a lot of people are going to get value out of it. So before we wrap, any other last minute tips, tricks, items that would be worth including before we wrap?
Top secret life hack is the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It will show you how to phrase everything so that it makes it sound really great for the other person to do. Essentially, you are expanding the principle of selfless for selfish reasons, and you're kind of getting somebody else on board to help you. I think this is kind of like what the good old boys club used to do. It's essentially people came together, figured out these are the rules of the game, and this like little life hacks and cheat codes of how to get what you want while it's mutually beneficial, because ultimately you want everything to be mutually beneficial, and that's what creates a thriving relationship, whether that is work or anything else. And that book will teach you exactly how to do that. Put that into your long-term plan.
All right, everyone, add that to your Amazon shopping cart. I know there's plenty of copies out there.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, Vivien, thank you as always for joining us. I know this one, as we said, it's not just related to recruiting, it's more general career advice, but I think it was interesting how, we were able to tie it back a little bit to the job descriptions and everything else. But yeah, I love these conversations. They're always fun. And hopefully others are able to pull something from this. It's going to help them. It's going to help them in their career and everything moving forward. So as we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. If you like this episode, you're not sure where to go next, we've got a link to a similar one in the show notes, which you can also find in the description of your favorite podcast streaming platform, as well as on our website, loxo.co/podcasts. Everyone, that's a show. That was a fun Tactical Tuesday with Vivien. Until next time, bye y'all.
Bye.